In your online marketing, you ever feel like a fraud? Well, you probably are. I'm going to explain that. I'm just going to come right out and say it right here on 8-Second Rule. Welcome to 8-Second Rule, the podcast about attention-based marketing that teaches you how to get, maintain, and build on your ideal audience's attention. Hey, welcome to the podcast today. I am Mark Morris. I'm your host. I am the bull writing copywriter with the most. And if you know me from LinkedIn, you know who I am. If you know me from Facebook, you know a little bit of a different side of me, but I've been around for a while. And what you see is what you get. You either love me or you hate me, but you're not going to ignore me unless you just decide to block me entirely, which is possible. So if I irritate you that badly, you might as well go ahead and do it because it's unlikely to change. Today, we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome. Those two little words that we use a lot, but I don't know if we really describe what it means or how we can deal with it. What is imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome is the idea that somehow you don't live up to the credentials that you're claiming for yourself, that somehow you aren't capable of professionally managing the job or the business or whatever it is that you're offering, and that people should be suspect of you, that you're making claims that you can't back up. But the thing with imposter syndrome is it's typically a false mindset. It's typically not real. It's typically, if a person is truly an imposter, then, imposter syndrome doesn't really apply to them. And that's one of the things we're going to discuss today is how to determine if you are, and that there's two different ways for you to be an imposter. And then we're going to talk about, how you can establish yourself and prove that you're not, and then kind of what that will mean for you going forward. So if you'll stick with me here on the 8-second rule, I will take you through those steps, and I hope that you'll get something out of it today. Hi, guys. This is Mark Morris, the copy bull writer from 8 Seconds Rule. And I just want to start off by telling you about Anchor. Anchor.fm. I found this site a couple of years ago, and it is the simplest and easiest way to start a podcast that I know of today. You can do it straight from your smartphone. You don't need anything but their app. It's free. They have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast. You can even add music, add buffers, all of those things right here on the site. It doesn't cost anything to host it. You can start as many as you want. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it's heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, many more, and you make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. As a writer, I have had my bouts with imposter syndrome, and what's ironic about that is that it has mostly come through the treatment of other writers, people who felt they were further along than me, needed to educate me as to how horrible I was, felt the need to belittle me or feel somehow superior. It's just playground behavior, really. And in the beginning, when I had written my first novel and I didn't really sell, I sold like 6 copies, and then it just felt like maybe that really wasn't something I could do, even though I'd been educated to do it, even though I felt that I was pretty good at it, even though I'd been paid to do it in some instances a few times. It just didn't seem like maybe that was for me. And I kind of fell victim to this for a little while. It didn't take me long to get over it, but it was really tough to deal with. And I see people come along and this comes up with them, especially in the writing field, because that's where I'm at. So I see it all the time. And I really feel for those who have it, and I'm going to help you today to help you diagnose it and help you get past it. So let's start with how you can determine if you should feel like an imposter. Let's just go right off the top. If you are making claims that you seriously cannot back up, if you're just guessing at what you say, if you haven't educated yourself, if you haven't spent the time in the trenches to be offering the type of services that you're offering, then you should be worried about being found out. In some circumstances, this can be considered fraud. And if you can't produce results, you could end up in a lot of trouble. So It's best if you stick to things that you actually do know, unless you want to pose yourself as a student, and that's fine. And there's even ways to break into and learn things. Listen, I've been paid to learn new skills, but they were an extension of something that I already knew. For example, as a carpenter, I'm a really good door hanger and builder, but there were things that I hadn't done. I started out in a cabinet shop, so framing a house was kind of a mystery to me. It turns out it's much easier than trim carpentry. And then things like concrete, roofing, plumbing, electrical. I learned about all of these as I went along, and I didn't charge anyone, until I knew what I was doing. But there were times when I would go home, I would get a book, or I would get on YouTube and I would look something up, and then I'd come back the next day and I'd do it for them. And it wasn't that I was being a fraud, but I was extending myself and I was getting paid to do it. So there are ways that you can get started in something, even if you're not really all that experienced. If you feel like you've got a great idea, let's say you've been doing your own marketing, you have some great results, and you think that you could apply that to someone else's company. Okay, well, do that. But remember, you need to be able to show your work. And if you can't, then you're going to eventually have to either come up with a new theory or back down. You can't keep taking people's money if you can't produce results. That's dishonest. And it'll end up biting you in the long run. Because you do actually reap what you sow in this world. Karma is a bitch. But listen, if karma is a bitch to you, it's because you are bitch to her first. So understand that whatever you are getting in life, it's probably because you put it out there, right? So if you're a fraud, just admit it. Just move on. I mean, if you can't just come right out and confess it, if you don't feel like there's people you need to make it right to, disappear for a little bit, come back as something that you know how to do, reinvent yourself. It's cool. We do it all the time. I've done it many times. And not because I was a fraud, but just because I came to the end of the line. I used to run a theater company. I taught acting for 20 plus years. And then in 2008, when the financial crisis hit, people stopped spending money with me and I moved on. And by the time I was in a position to come back to it, I just wasn't as excited about it as I had been as a young man. Kind of broke my heart and I moved on from it. I did something different with my life. And that's happened to me a number of times, and it probably will for you too. So the other way, though, that you can be an imposter, that you should be experiencing this feeling, is if you are underselling yourself, okay? If you're really good at something, but you kind of don't want to say that because of this imposter syndrome thing, guess what? You're being an imposter because you're selling yourself as something you're not. When you're truly an expert in something, then it's okay to say that. Now, you don't have to be arrogant or rude or aggressive about it, but at the same time, you shouldn't be hemming and hawing around and pretending that you don't know what to do, right? So two different kinds of imposter syndrome there, both having a similar result. Number one, you actually are a fraud. You've stepped past your boundaries. You need to rein yourself back in. Or number two, you're unwilling to even step out and say exactly what it is you can do, all right? Both of these will put you in a bad position. So here is a strategy that you can use to overcome imposter syndrome. If you have the skills, you have the education, you have the experience, and you can back that up, then what you need to do is you need to produce content that shows it. This is how content becomes king, okay? Now, a lot of times people are just throwing content to the wall to see what sticks, but here is what I personally recommend is content is a great way for solopreneurs and solo practitioners, freelancers, ghostwriters, graphic designers, website builders, coaches, whatever you are. If you work by yourself and you are generating your own leads, you're generating your own business, you need to be able to prove what you can do, right? So there's some great ways that you can do this. And the first is you can show your work. Okay. It's easy for me as a writer. If you are a public speaker, you could have a video channel that shows all of that, or you could do a podcast like I'm doing right now. If you are a coach, you could do the same thing. Okay. You can give away bits of information about what it is that you do, share that with the world, prove your expertise, let them hear that, let them see that, let them read it and ingest it and try some of it. And then they'll come back to you and be like, yeah, this guy really knows what he's talking about, or this girl really understands exactly where I'm at and how to get from point A to point B. So you start to prove that, and here are some things that you can do. Number one, you want to establish something that's a little bit more permanent than just a social media presence on a timeline. Those posts don't have a shelf life, okay? They have a shelf life of a few hours on most platforms, all right? Maybe a day or two, maybe a week at most. So find like on LinkedIn, which I talk about LinkedIn a lot because it's my primary platform. You could share articles there, and those will stay there for as long as you have your profile. So people can search those, and they can even be found through a Google search if you do the right keywords and you actually generate enough attention and you write about something that you know, then you have a chance to actually share that in a permanent format. YouTube is another great way to do it. There are a lot of other social media tools and things out there that I'm not going to try to list them all, and you can Google them and find them. Whatever it is you want to do. If you want to do written stuff, if you want to do podcasting, if you want to do video, if you want to display your art in a portfolio somewhere, build yourself a portfolio of work that you can share at a moment's notice. And it's best if it's links, if it's online, where you can send people to actually visually inspect it and experience it. This is something that you actually have is great, but if you can photograph it, if you can digitize it, if you can record it, then put it out there into the world, especially right now with the pandemic going on. It's great for people to be able to get their hands on that and actually experience what it is that you know and do. And when you do that, you're providing what's called social proof. And this is a big, big deal. Look, if you go looking for me as a writer, I described this in the first episode, but I'm just going to share it briefly again. I'll send you a link to my portfolio. You can look at the things that I've done. You can see where I've been and how I've grown and how I've gotten from where I started out to where I am now, where I've written 50 books with clients, and I'm a successful ghostwriter, and I'm able to demand a lot more money for my work because I know what I'm capable of. I don't feel imposter syndrome so much anymore. And I've put that proof out into the world where people can find it even before they contact me. In fact, most people who contact me about a writing project are already well qualified because they've seen what I have out there in the world. They've seen the social proof of that. Another facet of this that you can really take advantage of, especially on a platform like LinkedIn or even on a Facebook page or something like that, or on an Amazon account, is reviews. Okay, people giving you recommendations, people referring you, people. I can't think of what it's called on LinkedIn, but there's two different ways to do it. They can recommend you, and they can also. Anyway, there are two different things. One of them is very simple. One of them is an actual written description that attaches itself to your profile. And if you go down to the bottom of mine, you'll find several there for different things from people who have LinkedIn profiles that, are well connected. So it gives you an opportunity to actually get those referrals out there into the world and show people what you can do on a Facebook page or something like that. You have ratings. When you get to Amazon, if you're writing books, if you're producing books there, then what you're going to see is the review process and how many stars it's got. Each of those is going to help you to kind of build that ladder so that people will understand the value of your work. You want to incorporate as many other people into that process as you can to validate it. Okay, this is outside validation, bringing it to a point that this becomes a credential for you. Okay, if I've written a book about something, that's a great credential because I can say I wrote the book on that, and that's awesome. I can hand it to you. You can read it. You can see what I think. You might agree with me. You might not. But listen, if I have a foreword from the foremost expert in the world inside that book about that topic, and he is saying to you or she is saying to you, look, Mark Morris Jr., he really knows his stuff about this. When it comes to elephant poop, he's the guy. He knows everything there is to know about elephant poop. And if you needed an elephant poop expert, you could do no better than to find this book and read it, right? Then you would know I'm the expert on elephant poop. I'm not. My daughter, who's in vet school, hopes to be someday, but I am not. But that's just an example, an analogy, if you will, of the kind of thing that you can do with getting other people to kind of credential you and bring that forward. The more that they recommend you, the more that they share your things, the more that they speak out for you, the more valid it becomes. Okay, so you want to do that and put together this package so that when people start searching you and they start looking at your profile, they Google you, they follow you on social media, they start finding these things, right? That's great. That's awesome. That way, you have now established yourself. I am not an imposter, and you can see it. So let's take this to the next level. Once you have established yourself, once you've got this work out there where people can actually see it and they can tell that you know what you're doing and you've proven it, okay? You have the education, you have the experience, you have all these things, and you knew this in your mind the whole time, and you were producing results, but somehow you doubted yourself because somebody who was just starting out in your business and had gotten a certification or something like that questioned you and made you feel like, maybe I'm not as valid as I think I am. Maybe this little hotshot, he really is good at this. He's saying a lot of good stuff. Well, he may be lying. You don't know. If you haven't investigated him, how do you know? Maybe he's the imposter. But you start to feel bad about yourself. So you've got to build this back up. And you have to operate from this place where you look at your body of work and you go, look, I've produced good results for people. Me personally, I know that my writing has produced millions of dollars in sales for companies all over the globe. Now, it hasn't done that all at once, obviously, but I know for a fact that I have sold multi-$100,000 deals for people in at least 3 or 4 different industries that I've written for. Okay, that's amazing. How does that happen? I've got one guy that I'm a ghostwriter for. His entire livelihood through this pandemic has been the books that we wrote together. He's selling those because he can't get out to do his public speaking engagements the way he wants to. And so that's how he's keeping his family afloat. He's doing that. He wants to write another one, but he can't afford to right now because he's living off of the royalties from his books. But that's amazing. That's out there, and I'm sustaining my work in partnership with him is sustaining his family right now. And it's also sustaining mine. I can prove that I know what I'm doing, that I have some expertise in this. There are other places in the world like carpentry where I can show you photos of something I started with and what I ended up with. I'm good at it. I know what I'm doing, right? So once that happens, then I have to own that. I have to get that down inside myself. And I wrote a post on LinkedIn about this the other day, about how the hardest thing that I had to do when I started writing was learn to call myself a writer in public. Hi, I'm Mark. I'm a writer. It's a weird thing to say, right? But it's also interesting. It's better than saying, hi, I'm Mark. I run a shift at McDonald's. I mean, what does anybody ask about that? Can I get a free cheeseburger? But if you're a writer, they want to know what you've written. And once you tell them, they're going to ask more questions. What's that like? I've always wanted to write a book. That's the one thing I hear from most people. I've always thought about writing a novel. I have this great idea. And then they want to share it with you. That's great. That's fine. It's a conversation. I like conversation. But you need to own this. You need to get it down into your soul to where when people question you, you just tell them, look, no, this is who I am. This is what I do. And I know that I'm good at what I do, and I'm not going to let you rob me of that. So what we've talked about today so far, let's do a little wrap up here. First of all, you need to determine, are you an imposter? There's 2 different ways you could be. You may be faking people out, or you may be understating your abilities and your value in the marketplace. Either way, you need to quit it. You need to fix that. You need to step back, or you need to push forward, whichever it is, okay? Then you need to establish the proof that people can see, not just in your own mind, but actually put it out there where everyone can recognize what you're capable of, all right? And then you have to build that up inside yourself as you're going through setting up this proof. Let these be the reminders. Let these be the guideposts that build in you a confidence that you can stand up and say, this is what I do, this is who I am, and I know the kind of results I can produce for you. All right, guys, that's it today for the 8-second rule. And thank you so much for listening. Again, I am Mark Morris, and I wanted to tell you about another free resource because I always want to share one. And these are 2 of my favorites. If you're on your social media and you're looking for fun images to share, or maybe you're writing a blog or you're writing articles, or you're even doing like a book cover or something like that, there's some great free image sites out there. The one that comes closest to being like an actual repository of excellent stock footage, of excellent stock photos, is pixabay.com, pixabay.com. You don't pay a dime, and you can get large-scale, high-res images of all kinds of things. They have hundreds of thousands of photos there. Now, the other thing that I really like, this is my personal favorite site to find photos from because they do all kinds of goofy, whimsical things that are really funny and silly and fun. If you see a silly image on any of my stuff, it probably came from Gratisography, gratisography.com, and it's also free. Great images, fantastic stuff. Both of these sites will let you manipulate those images and do what you want with them. So there's your freebie for the day. I hope that you've enjoyed 8-second rule, and I will see you around.